Yo, what's up? Welcome inside the opening line. Corey and Benny coming at you on a lovely Wednesday morning. Well, not lovely. It's overcast and rainy up here in the city. What's the deal with you, Benny?
Yeah, it is pretty crappy out. Took the kids to school this morning. My one guy is actually home because his school is in a very Jewish neighborhood, and today's apparently a Jewish holiday.
Four of these kids are home too.
Yeah, so got one of my kids home. The other two are in school. So I guess I don't know how that works, but it did.
Yeah. Well, this is Long Island, Benny. Everybody's home.
Well, that's it. My one son goes to school in Bergen County, and heavy Jewish population up there. So my guess is too many teachers would have called out. So
yeah,
they just said, "Screw it, you can stay home today, and we'll make it up on Easter break or something."
All right, cool. Let's get ready to hop into it. Got some baseball to get at today, but as far as the NFL goes, Benny, I got a couple questions for you.
Go ahead.
I'll start with here's the first one. Through 5 weeks, who's the number one quarterback in fantasy?
Is it Mahomes?
Mahomes is second.
Okay. I mean, Watson had a big week last week, but I don't know if he was up there. This is
Watson is third.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson is fourth. You're going down the list.
So who am I missing? Is it Matt Ryan?
Matt Ryan is sixth.
Dude, number one? Who's had huge weeks? Number one. I don't even know. Who is it?
It's Russell Wilson.
Okay. That's not crazy.
The forgotten man during draft season.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is Russell Wilson the top quarterback in fantasy, he's the second highest scoring player in the hobby altogether.
Okay.
He's not having big games. He's just giving you about 25 fantasy points per game. He's not even throwing the football a lot.
He hasn't thrown the football a lot in the last couple of years, but he's very efficient when he does. He gets touchdowns. He can use his legs a little bit to get some yards. I mean, there's a lot of positives to him. That's surprising, though. I would not have thought he was first. Like you said, it's not like he's putting up monster games, but he just consistently puts up very good games every week.
He has 14 touchdowns on the season, 12 through the air and two via the ground.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that either, but it makes sense.
So Russell Wilson is 1, Patrick Mahomes is 2, Deshaun Watson 3, Lamar Jackson 4, Dak Prescott 5, Matt Ryan
all guys that can use their legs.
All guys that can use their legs. Matt Ryan 6, a guy who can just fall behind so far that he has to throw himself into 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
Yep.
Tom Brady also extremely efficient. Kyler Murray at 9. Kyler Murray at 8. Carson Wentz at 9, Jameis at 10, Gardner Minshew at 11, and Jacoby Brissett through 5 weeks rounds out the top 12 quarterbacks. Those are the QB1s. Out of these names, Benny, who's going to not be there when the season ends?
I would like to say Kyler Murray, but just because of the pace they play at and the number of plays, I think he stayed. The guy who I think is probably going to fall the most may be Matt Ryan, but I don't know. I mean, listen, there's such a big advantage to the guys that can use their legs because of the scoring of rushing yards, right? That's why you have the top 5 guys are all guys that use their legs. Even Carson Wentz and Kyler Murray, those are guys that use their legs too. Gardner Minshew has been good because he's a highly accurate quarterback, which is what he has in common with the guys that are ahead of him, like a Tom Brady, who don't use their legs but are still up there on this list. So really, that's my biggest takeaway from this is guys that use their legs or guys that are extremely accurate are the ones that are going to wind up at the top of this list. I'm going to say if I had to pick somebody to fall off this list, it's probably going to be Kyler Murray, but I don't think he falls very far just because of the pace that they play at.
I would say it's Jacoby Brissett.
Okay.
Because with Brissett, I see Brissett more as a game manager. Now, he's doing a good job of it. But when that team is playing well and they're rolling and they're playing the way they want to play, it's short passes and it's running the football with Marlon Mack.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest strength on that offense is actually the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kind of things that you do when you have an offensive line. You run the ball, you pick up 3 or 4 yards, you put yourself in third and short, and then you make those short passes, get the first down, and kind of grind the clock, which is exactly what they did to beat Kansas City. And I think that's when they're at their best, when they're able to play that way. But, he does have some weapons. I mean, T.Y. Hilton is one of the best receivers in the league. You got solid tight ends out there that are making plays too. And this is a team that has been in the red zone and has been scoring some touchdowns. So I think Brissett can kind of hang in there. He's definitely not going to move up on this list, though. He's not a guy that they're asking to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. So I don't see much upside for him, but, he's had a solid year, and I don't think you can knock what he's done.
Names outside of the list. Phil Rivers, which, we know what Phil Rivers is. Andy Dalton, who was leading the league in passing, but is not really doing anything else. Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers is QB 19 right now.
I would not be very happy if I'm an Aaron Rodgers owner. Again, we see what this team wants to do. They want to play defense and they want to run the football. You talk about Jacoby Brissett not being asked to do too much. Aaron Rodgers is being asked to throw less than 30 passes a game right now. So you can't look at him as the guy from a couple years ago who had to put that entire offense on his back with Ty Montgomery as his best running back, catching passes out of the backfield. This isn't 350-3 Aaron Rodgers anymore. It's 250-2 on his good games and, 150 yards rushing, and they win games 21-12,
Kirk Cousins also is outside of this list. He comes in as QB 21. Teddy Bridgewater, QB 24. Jimmy Garoppolo, QB 23.
The one thing that all those guys you just mentioned have in common is good running games.
Yep, no doubt.
And that's the thing. I mean, if you don't need him, like Jameis Winston is going to stay on the list because Jameis Winston doesn't have a running game. So they're going to have to keep throwing the ball, and he's going to wind up putting up big numbers for it. Matt Ryan probably stays on the list for a very similar reason. The run game hasn't been – they don't have a run game that they can rely on where they can just not throw the football and just run. So those guys are going to have to keep throwing the ball. They're going to keep putting up numbers. They're going to keep getting their touchdowns. I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't mean that Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers or, that Kirk Cousins suck. Well, Kirk Cousins does kind of suck a little bit, but, it's not a knock on the quarterback. It's just the system that some of these guys are in for fantasy. Other guys are going to be able to put up bigger numbers.
So Russell Wilson has 126 fantasy points.
Through 5 games.
Mm-hmm. Baker Mayfield has 47. So
Baker Mayfield is actually the lowest rated quarterback right now in the NFL.
People that have not that bad.
Well, that's your Luke Falk. I meant like guys that have started since the beginning of the season and all that.
But Benny, hear about this. Mason Rudolph, Case Keenum, and Daniel Jones, and Kyle Allen all have more fantasy points than Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Listen, that offense looks horrible. Now, the offensive line is bad, but I don't want to blame it completely on the offensive line. If you've watched some of those games, Baker's got happy feet. Baker's making some bad throws, and he just doesn't look comfortable there in the pocket. For a guy who talks as much as he does, it's time for you to step up and admit that you're the one who sucked and try to figure it out. I heard something good today this week. I forget which podcast I was listening to, but basically they were saying that Baker Mayfield is trying to play like Russell Wilson when he should be playing more like Drew Brees. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good analogy there because he's trying to run around and make things happen when what he really should be doing is saying to himself, I got 3 seconds to get this ball out. Make my read, see who's open, get the ball out. Make my read, see who's open, get the ball out. And that's not really what he's doing right now. And you can tell, he's trying to do a little bit too much, and it's actually hurting the team.
Oh, no doubt. They got to get that situation figured out. Obviously, Odell Beckham, all investors, not happy with Baker Mayfield right now. Benny, I think I would not surprise you. If I was to ask you to guess who's the top running back in fantasy, I think you'd have a pretty easy time of that.
I'm assuming McCaffrey.
It's clearly Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. Followed by Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler. Nick Chubb is 5th.
That's a little surprising.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I will say is he's getting the volume. He's getting a lot of carries every game, 15 plus. He's also getting some passing down work. Same thing with a guy like Leonard Fournette. Like some of these guys might not be, even my guy Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets. Some of these guys might not be putting up massive, yardage totals and numbers yet because their offenses aren't that good. But if you're going to keep giving these guys as much work as you're giving them, they're going to wind up having some big weeks at some point. You're going to break a big one. You're going to have a touchdown catch. So these are the kind of guys that I like. Chubb is one of those guys. Like, I honestly think he hasn't even broken out yet because really they've been playing from behind most of the season. So they haven't even had the games where they fed him. You know what I mean?
Yep. So I think Chubb could have some big things coming down the stretch, especially if they can start winning some football games. Mm-hmm. I think Austin Eckler, obviously he won't be top 5, but I still think he's possibly top 15. Mark Ingram is 6. Derrick Henry is 7. Derrick Henry's been amazing. Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs also very good at 8. Alvin Kamara 9. Zeke 10. Leonard Fournette 11. David Johnson 12. So that's the top 12 right now. Not too much surprise or anything out of the ordinary here. We see Aaron Jones III coming off that big game, Benny. When you look at the rest of it, Todd Gurley is 15. Phil Lindsay is 14. Who would you rather have rest of the way?
I'd probably still go Todd Gurley. But if we're redrafting right now and people are still taking Gurley in the second round, I'll let him have him. Yeah,
no doubt. I would agree with you 100% on that one right there. Would you rather have Marlon Mack or Todd Gurley rest of the way?
I mean, both of them are a little banged up right now. I'd probably say Gurley because Mack doesn't really get any passing down work. He's got a better line to run behind, and he's going to have some of those games like he just had where he runs 20-something times for 130 yards, but he doesn't really get any passing down work because they got Nyheim Hines there. Gurley at least is still getting passing down looks, and especially in a PPR, those passing down points are good.
Marlon Mack or James Conner rest of the way?
Marlon Mack.
Said that pretty easily. James Conner right now, running back 18.
Yeah, and the biggest problem there with me is the quarterback play, right? Like, I mean, there's a good relationship between having a passing game and opening up lanes for your running back. When you got second and third string quarterbacks in there, teams are going to play it a little more aggressive at the line there and a quarterback to beat them. If you're going to start seeing more 8-man box and more safeties creeping up, it's not going to make it easy for you to run.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. That situation could get interesting. Frank Gore is RB 20 right now. Matt Breida, RB 19. LaShawn McCoy, RB 21. He's the first mention of a Kansas City Chief running back, and this LaShawn McCoy.
What about LaShawn McCoy? Who are we comparing him to here?
I'd
rather have Breida. Breida, you said, was right ahead of him, right? I'd rather have Matt Breida than McCoy.
McCoy or Sony Michel?
That's actually an interesting question. I'm going to say McCoy because I think Rex Burkhead's coming back this week.
Okay.
And that's a 3-headed monster in New England with Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, and James White. Whereas I think when Kansas City is healthy, it's basically a 2-headed monster. It's Damian Williams and LaShawn McCoy. I just feel like McCoy will probably get more and better, more opportunities for, touchdowns and better touches there. And he also gets passing down work and rushing down work. Sony Michel, you're really only getting rushing down and touchdowns, right? You're getting rushing yards and touchdowns. You're not going to get any passing down work out of him. So I'd probably lean McCoy in that one.
Right now, RB 23 is Kerryon Johnson. If you're a Kerryon owner, are you happy?
I'm not happy at all. Mm-hmm. This was a guy who started firing up the draft boards at the end of the season, creeping into the second round and even towards the beginning of the second round, like pick 13 to pick 18. Detroit's actually a pretty good team, Corey. The defense is good. They've won some games. They've looked pretty good here. I don't think we got when they got rid of Theo Riddick, I think everybody just assumed that Kerryon Johnson was going to just get a monster workload, 15, 20 carries, 5-6, receptions or 5-6 targets every game. He hasn't really had that, and he hasn't really had that big game. I think he's going to have a game where he breaks a couple and he winds up putting up some big numbers, but so far I'm not really happy with the returns I've seen from him.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, right quick off topic, Benny. Did you see when Snoop Dogg performed at Midnight Madness on Kansas campus?
I didn't see it, but I heard about it with the strippers and the stripper poles, and then Bill Self apparently was like, that's not entertainment or whatever.
This is like they said it was they didn't use the word strippers. They said Oh, they said Snoop told us that he was going to be bringing some acrobatic dancers.
They were definitely doing acrobatic stuff on the bowls, I would assume, yeah.
Oh, man, Snoop Dogg with strippers, a money gun, smoking weed on James Naismith court. Benny, what a time to be alive.
You know what? 2019's lit.
Benny, your boy Le'Veon Bell is RB 25. Frank Gore is having a better season than him, and so is Jordan Howard, Benny.
I mean, the Jets' offensive line pretty much sucks. I would think that – listen, you know I wasn't as high as a lot of other delusional Jet fans on us this season, and, you know, I didn't think we were going to wind up being a very good team. I was thinking 8-8 is probably the best we can hope for. I do think having Sam Darnold back is going to make things a little bit easier for everybody else. Again, right now with Luke Falk, they have zero threat of pass. So, you know, they're basically, when they drop back, the passes are usually 2-yard passes to Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield, and then he's getting hit by 2 or 3 guys because teams are creeping up. Hopefully Sam Darnold can kind of keep teams honest, maybe hit Robbie Anderson down the field a little bit, or, you know, stretch the field a little bit with Chris Herndon coming back at tight end or something like that. I think the fact that he's getting the volume is a reason why you got to kind of be happy about Le'Veon Bell. But listen, the Jets offense, again, with Luke Falk, they can't even score touchdowns. So you're not getting any touchdown equity. Everything you're getting from Le'Veon Bell right now is basically just catches and yards.
Yep, and that's basically what it is. He does have that one touchdown when Sam Darnold was out there. Devontae Freeman's running back 29. Joe Mixon's running back 31, Benny. What are we doing with these two?
I mean, nothing good. You know, Cincinnati's not a very good team, and Mixon loses some of that, you know, no huddle, fast-paced work to Gio Bernard. If they're not going to win any games this year, we're not going to have those games where Mixon gets 25 touches and, you know, runs or gets a total of 130, 140 yards and a couple touchdowns. Maybe there's 1 or 2 of them at some point during the season, but you can't be real happy about him, guy who was basically like a second, third round pick this year. Who's the other guy you said before Mixon?
Freeman
is the same.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, Freeman's the same thing. I mean, he's getting the touches, but they're just not doing anything with him. He's not getting in the end zone. He's really not getting a massive amount of passing down work, which is something we thought would have given him a little bit of a higher floor. I mean, he's the number 1 running back in Atlanta, but again, if Atlanta keeps losing and playing from behind, you're going to keep getting 300-yard passing games from Matt Ryan at the expense of, you know, production from Devonta Freeman.
Freeman has 22 receptions. So it's not really the catches. He's just not doing nothing. And the runs are coming at under 4 yards a clip. Mm-hmm. Running back 36 right now, Benny, is Miles Sanders. Running back 37 is James White. Which one would you rather have the rest of the way?
What are we talking here? Are we talking an upside guy? Because I think there's more upside with Miles Sanders.
I agree.
But, you know, I mean, James White is a consistent 10 to 12 fantasy points a game in PPR because he's getting 5 catches.
And he does. It's very similar situations because they each have guys getting touchdowns ahead of them. Yep. But the pass catching ability of Jimmy White is there. With old boy Miles Sanders, we've seen him catch some balls too. His thing is he needs to get in the end zone and keep Jordan Howard from getting in the end zone.
Yeah, Miles Sanders is actually being used as their passing down running back,
yep.
which is nice. So really, if I think I would roll the dice on Miles Sanders if I had the chance right now, because like you said, it's a little bit if Jordan Howard gets hurt, his role becomes huge. You know, even if Sony Michel gets hurt, you still got Rex Burkhead to deal with there with James White. You know, it is what it is. So I like both of those guys, but I would probably take the chance on Miles Sanders because I think Sanders has a chance for a bigger upside if things break his way.
Benny, can you guess the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football?
The number 1 wide receiver right now, Chris Godwin.
Yes, it's Chris Godwin.
Yep.
And it's Chris Godwin, not by a lot. There's people there with him, but he has a good 6-point lead. So Chris Godwin right now is wide receiver 1-1.
Yep.
Amari Cooper is wide receiver 1-2.
Yeah, Cooper's had some big games this year. I mean, what did he have, 200-something yards last week? That's yep. When we're only 5 games into the season, if you have a 200-yard game, it's going to put you up there towards the top.
Wide receiver 3, DJ Chark.
Doop, 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 doop.
DJ Chark.
I said that to people the other day. Like, the fact that he's still 40%, that he's only owned in 60% of leagues when we were looking at that the other day, It's crazy to me. This guy should be owned, even if you're in like a 5-team league. This guy should be owned and being started. He's every week coming up with a touchdown. He's Gardner Minshew's number 1 wide receiver.
Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 4.
Love Cooper Kupp this year, and that's the way their offense is going. You also have Brandon Cooks, who has a concussion, so he may be out this week. If he's out this week, I only see more targets getting funneled towards Cooper Kupp. You might get Josh Reynolds in there starting, and Robert Woods, who could see a little bit of an uptick too. But Cooper Kupp is the number 1 wide receiver here. And listen, they're not running the ball as much with Gurley or using Gurley out of the backfield as much, limiting his touches a little. That means you're getting short passes. 2 guys who have benefited a lot, Corey, Gerald Everett, the tight end, and Cooper Kupp over the middle of the field.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 4, but his quarterback is wide receiver 20-something. So that goes to show you that the offense is clearly focused on Cooper Kupp. Michael Thomas, wide receiver 5, another person who's getting all the targets in their passing game. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 6. He's been a target monster. Wide receiver 7, Benny, is interesting.
Wide receiver 7.
Adam Thielen.
He's got a lot of touchdowns. That's why. He had a rushing touchdown. I think he had 2 multi-touchdown games already this year. Again, I liked him.
5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I liked him more than I like Steph Diggs coming into the season. Looks like I'm right so far. I don't really love either one of these guys, Corey. I think they're both going to underperform expectations. And not because of anything that they're doing wrong. It's just Dalvin Cook is very good, and you should be leaning on a Dalvin Cook, which means you're going to get less opportunities for these guys. So he's done a lot with the opportunities he's had so far. But if you're going to ask me that same question about who might drop out of the top 10 here, that would be a guy that I'd have up there just based on the fact that I don't think he's going to see the volume that a lot of these other guys are.
Mike Evans is wide receiver 8, so we see Godwin and Evans. That's why you see Jameis with that top 12 ranking. A wide receiver 9 is Julio Jones. We know what Julio is. Here's another interesting one right here, Benny. Wide receiver 10 is Cortland Sutton. Joe Flacco is nowhere near the top 25. That means that we are seeing a breakout for Cortland Sutton in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Cortland Sutton versus Emmanuel Sanders in the offseason. Remember trying to figure out who Denver's number 1 was going to be. I have a little bit of exposure to both of those guys, but not a ton. So I like every time I see Cortland Sutton catch one of those long passes down the field. I mean, listen, when they drafted this guy, they drafted him because he was supposed to be a young Demaryius Thomas and the guy who they were expecting to step in and replace Demaryius Thomas. Wide receivers, sometimes it takes them a little longer to kind of hit. And it looks like this guy's starting to figure it out and, is going to be a pretty good wide receiver going forward. They got to get him a good quarterback there to really take advantage of him. But Cortland Sutton's good. He can play.
A wide receiver 11 is clearly one that is probably going to drop out of this list. And he's only in this list because of this past week. Wide receiver 11 is currently Will Fuller. We really can't have a lot of stock in Will Fuller. We've seen Kenny Stills look like he very well could be 2 or 2A. You know what D-Hop is. Will Fuller is just there off the strength for that one game.
My biggest problem with Will Fuller is consistency, right? Like he's not going to be the target monster because he's on the team with Hopkins, who's always going to be the guy who sees more targets, which basically means he has to do a lot with the targets that he gets. 5 to 7 targets. A lot of them are downfield. He is the guy that stretches the defense. So when he catches them like he did last week, you're going to get a couple big games out of Will Fuller. When he doesn't catch the big long touchdowns, though, I mean, he's like a 10-point floor kind of guy. So low floor, huge ceiling. Again, how often can you expect him to go off like he did last week? I would say that that's probably his best game for the season, and he may only have one other game where he gets over 20 fantasy points.
Wide receiver 12 is Tyler Lockett. You know what that's about right there. Obviously, we've seen what Russell Wilson is doing. Sammy Watkins is wide receiver 13. He stays hurt. Wide receiver 14, Hollywood Brown. 15 is Allen Robinson. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say we liked Allen Robinson coming into the year. He started getting more targets towards the end of last year. Think about that. He's wide receiver 15 with a horrendous quarterback.
Exactly. That shows you the passing game is going through him.
Yeah, so if you put him with somebody who is even at least competent, you got to think that those numbers would be even better too. But like you said, it does kind of show that he's the guy that they're using and targeting whenever they need to throw the ball. So I like Allen Robinson. I have some shares of him. I got him as like a wide receiver 3. 15th overall means he's playing like a wide receiver 2. So I'm happy about that.
Terry McLaurin is wide receiver 16. This right here is a sell opportunity after he has a big game. It's going to be a shit show in Washington. I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Snyder ends up coaching the team at some point. Larry Fitzgerald is wide receiver 19. Julian Edelman, wide receiver 20. Calvin Ridley is 21, and T.Y. Hilton is 22, Benny. Tyler Boyd is 23. Out of that grouping right there, Ridley, Hilton, and Boyd, I think one of these dudes right here ends up inside that top 15 at least. I don't know who that guy's going to be, though.
If I had to bet on it right now, I would say Tyler Boyd.
I would agree.
And the reason I'll say that is, Ridley, as good as he is, and I love Calvin Ridley, he's still the number 2 wide receiver on that team. T.Y. Hilton plays on an offense that really does want to run the ball a little bit more. When you look at guys that could come up with 10 targets a game the rest of the way, listen, Cincinnati's bad, like real bad. I don't see them having many leads. The same reason why I'm not high on Mixon is the reason why I'd be a little bit higher on Boyd is I don't see any way this guy doesn't keep getting 7 to 10 targets a game because they're going to be trailing, they're going to be throwing, and that just gives them even more chances to put up fantasy points. So if one of these guys is going to keep going and kind of even step up his game from here on out, I think Tyler Boyd has the best opportunity to do that. So that's where my money would be.
Wide receiver 27 is DeAndre Hopkins. Wide receiver 28 is Juju Smith-Schuster.
I'd rather take D-Hop.
No doubt.
Again, we talked about Pittsburgh already. We don't know what's going to go on with that quarterback situation there. Even the wide receiver situation, I think James Washington is banged up and might not play this week. So they might have to go back to like a Dante Moncrief. I just don't like that Pittsburgh offense. I don't like backup single callers being in there. I'd much rather bet on, DeAndre Hopkins, who has always been a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. I'd much rather bet on him coming back and having a big week. Now the team's got to be a little bit more honest and, not leave Will Fuller in one-on-one situations with guys that run 4.6 40s.
Who would you rather have rest of the way, Benny? Michael Gallup or Calvin Ridley?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to say Ridley because I think Atlanta will be losing more and, passing more coming from behind. But I love Michael Gallup, man. I took him late in a couple drafts, Corey, and he's been on he's missed a couple weeks, but the weeks that he's played, he's wound up on my best ball rosters, my best rosters a couple times.
No, he's a starter in the 12-team league. And even if you can only start 3 wides, I think he gets that 3rd wide spot.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, Benny, who's the top tight end in fantasy football?
To this point in the season?
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews had a big start, but he hasn't had good games the last couple.
Mark Andrews is tight end 5.
Is it Will Dissly?
Will Disley is tight end 1, Benny. How about that?
Yeah. No, because I'm just trying to think. He's had 2 multi-touchdown games. I think he had a touchdown in 3 of – he's on like a Eric Ebron pace right now. I think he's got 5 or 6 touchdowns already in 5 weeks.
I would try to buy Will Disley.
I actually dropped Will Dissly in one league after week 1.
Mm-hmm.
I had Darren Waller and who was my other tight end? Oh, you know what? Darren Waller was the guy I kept. I had 2 tight ends. I dropped Dissly. I kept Waller. So it's not like I'm that upset about it, but I dropped him after week 1.
Will Disley and Austin Hooper are the top 2 tight ends. I think that it's opportunities for trades with these guys here, possibly, Benny, because if you have Disley or Hooper, like you just said, you probably got somebody else too.
Yeah. Well, here's what I will say. Wait until next week to trade Hooper because you know who Hooper's matchup is, right?
The Arizona Cardinals. There you go right there.
Absolutely been getting lit up by tight ends this season. So wait till Monday to trade Hooper. Make sure you get one more start out of him.
Travis Kelce is tight end 3, Evan Ingram tight end 4, Mark Andrews tight end 5, Zach Ertz 6, Waller 7. Greg Olsen had a couple big games. He's 8. He's done now. I wouldn't see much more from him. Yep. George Kittle is 9, Benny, and he was one of the probably the second guy going off the board.
He was the second guy going off the board, even ahead of Ertz in most drafts. Underperformed a little bit. I mean, I think part of what's hurting Kittle right now, Corey, is that San Francisco's actually good. Last year when they weren't good and they were losing games, they had to throw more. They were coming from behind. I mean, he is the number 1 – I'm not going to say wide receiver, but the number 1 pass catcher in San Francisco. He's the guy that's seeing the most targets, the most consistent targets, the best targets, the red zone targets. Like he's the guy that's getting the biggest opportunity, but they've been scoring. I mean, Jeff Wilson has 4 rushing touchdowns right now. You got some rushing touchdowns from Breda last game. You got a rushing touchdown from Tevin Coleman last game. Like, as long as this team is good and they're playing with the lead and they're able to run the ball, they don't need the pass. In order for Kittle, like Kittle's games have basically been like 5 catches, 50 yards so far.
Yep.
Last year, he was getting like 7 or 8 catches on 10, 12 targets and 100-plus yards. I mean, he led the league in yardage last year because he had so many of those games. I don't think they need to use him this much. So not a knock on Kittle at all. It's just his team is better this year.
I would still see it as a buying opportunity because I think the schedule gets tougher. And I think as they're in more close games, I think you start to see them lean on Kittle more. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, that's the thing. They've had a couple games where they've been well ahead and just kind of running out the clock and relying on the running game. You know, I mean, you got to think that defense is really good. So this team is probably going to be playing from ahead more than it did last year. I don't think he reaches the numbers he reached last year, but to me, he's still a top 5-6 tight end in the league.
Tight end 12 right now is Gerald Everett.
He's had a couple big games. I mean, and we mentioned that, you know, if they're not giving the ball to Gurley and they're not throwing it to him as much out of the backfield, they're still throwing the ball. They're just using those short passing game as, you know, like long handoffs. Gerald Everett, Cooper Kupp have been the 2 guys that have kind of, you know, benefited from that overall. Tyler Higbee was hurt for a couple games, which also kind of helped Everett. So you got to see how much, you know, he factors into the equation there. But Gerald Everett has been pretty good this year.
Okay, there you go right there. A little updated stock watch. Don't forget fantasyguru.com for all your season-long fantasy football needs. All right, Benny, here we go today. We got a couple big ones. Got a couple game 5s. Let's start in Atlanta. Flaherty versus Fulton Edwards. You know I'm on the Braves.
I hate to say it, but I think I would be too. Fulty looked real good against the Cardinals in the first game. Flaherty gave up a couple runs, wasn't as good. You know, I mean, this is going to be a really close game. Like, honestly, this is a coin flip. I wouldn't bet on it, but if I had to, I would probably be on the Braves side with it.
Washington Nationals send Strasburg to the mound. You got Walker Buehler for the Dodgers.
Yeah, 2 very good pitchers going up there. Walker Buehler pitched 6 scoreless against them the first time he went out. I think he had 8 strikeouts or so. I think Strasburg gave up like 1 run over 6 or 7 innings the first time he went out there. This is the thing with this game. I think both of these pitchers are going to be good. This game is going to end 2-1, 3-1, something like that. So my favorite thing to do is betting the under. If I had to bet right now on it, Corey, I'd probably take the Dodgers. No, you know what? I'm going to say it this way. I'm going to take Washington because I think you're getting better money on Washington. I'd rather be on the underdog in this game because it's going to be a pitcher's duel, and honestly, to me, it's a coin flip. Somebody's going to hit a home run at some point, and I think that's going to be the difference in the game. It's going to be like 2-1 or 3-1, something like that.
What's interesting right now in the FanDuel Sportsbook, you're getting the Nationals at plus 148. And the Braves and Cardinals, the Braves are the underdog.
Really?
They're plus 102.
You know what? That's it. Like I said, Fulty looked really good against them. He pitched, I think it was either game 1 or game 2. No, it was game 2 because Keuchel pitched game 1. He pitched game 2 against them, looked really good. Went 6 innings. Want to say he had like 7 or 8 strikeouts as well. Only gave up like maybe 3 or 4 base runners, like 2 or 3 hits and a walk or 2. I kind of want to stay on that side of it. I mean, you know, I was on the Cardinals the last game to bring it here, but I think I'm on the Braves right now to take it home.
All right, big piece of chicken, Benny.
Let's see what happened last night. Big piece of chicken goes out to the Miami Heat last night, Corey.
I was waiting for you, Benny.
Yeah, that was the only bet I made last night was the Miami Heat against San Antonio Spurs. You and I talked about it before the game started. The Spurs don't really give a shit about the preseason.
Did you see how that number moves? When we talked about it yesterday morning, that was -1. When I checked back yesterday afternoon, it had got up to -3.5.
It was up to -5 by game time.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I took the money line. I took the money line when it was like -140.
Exactly.
So I was fine with that. But it got up, the money line got up to -160. And I think it was before the game, it was -5. And they covered it easy, right? What was the final? Like 20 points. I stopped watching in the fourth quarter. They were up 20.
Where was you watching it at?
On the NBA.com app.
Okay. I didn't know they had those games on there.
Yeah, to be honest, most of the preseason games were. And I was trying to watch like a whole bunch of different games to kind of get an idea of, you know, a lot of teams, it was their first game to like see some of the rotations, the starters and stuff like that. One game was on ESPN. One game they didn't even have a feed for. And that game, they only had the home feed from Miami.
Okay. My big piece of chicken goes to Tyler Hero. I saw a couple of those step back jimmies he was knocking down. He's a young man that should be in for an interesting rookie season. For my main man, Benny Ricciardi, is Corey Parson, the fantasy executive, the opening line. We are out.